members of the commission, I know this item is agendized for Deputy Director Jack Robb, and I'll turn it over to him just briefly, but I did want to just provide a broader context for the presentation that you're about to hear. So as everybody knows, a great deal of uncertainty around us right now in the world, in the country, in the state, and the department. There is unprecedented reliance on the outdoors right now, people seeking solace and comfort. And we've seen unprecedented demands on our outdoor resources. Our state's budget is facing some unprecedented challenges that have affected our agency's share of general fund, if you will. We get a very, very small amount of general fund, as we've shared with you before. Approximately 95% of our agency's budget comes from user-derived fees, whether those user fees are coming from the federal excise taxes that are paid, and then the eligibility for access comes from actual license sales, certification of hunters and anglers, or whether it comes directly from tag and license sales. Approximately 95% of our agency's budget comes from those user activities and level of activities. And despite public comment to the contrary, our agency has a very, very broad mission. We take it very seriously. We have approximately 895 commonly occurring species in the state. Only 8% of those species provide any opportunity for revenue generation. So we have a very narrow funding model and a very broad statutory charge, and it creates obviously some opportunities for challenges, not the least of which are the sustainability of our funding and our funding model. So because all of this is swirling around us right now, and within the last 3 years, we've made a number of changes, we thought this would be a opportune time to look at those changes, look at the trends, look at what approach the department has taken to provide a little bit more sustainability in fulfilling our mission. This is about conservation first and foremost, fulfilling the agency mission of enhancing our ability to conserve Nevada's natural resources. So with that context, Madam Chair, Commission, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Director Robb.
Jack Robb for the record. I appreciate this opportunity, Madam Chair and Commissioners, to share some of the good things we've done in the last 3 years. I'll try to share my screen here. Everybody see the screen all right? Okay. Today we're going to talk about our license simplification effort and CalCMI 3-year review. We're going to discuss the how and why NDOW took this on. We're going to look at national trends and initiatives, Nevada's trends, NDOW's approach to change, measure results, and what does this mean for Nevada's wildlife. These are the national trends dating back to 2004 through current, using U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service data. We charted this out, and as you can see, fishing has been up and down a little bit, but remains just under 30 million anglers annually. And hunting is right around 15 million and staying steady. This was a Nevada trend prior to simplification and the new vendor rollout. We started with looking at license simplification in the 13-14 timeframe, and we really started working on it hard in the 15-16 timeframe, when you can see fishing just falling off. That was multiple things occurring there. We were in a downward trend already. You couple that with drought, reservoirs empty and everything, our angling was dropping at a rapid pace. Our hunting was on a steady but very low incline, but it was gaining. During this time frame, we looked at surrounding states, and this is through to date using U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service numbers. what they put in for their license certifications. And if you look at what was going on westwide, California was on a steady decline. Oregon was on a steady decline. Arizona was flat. But then you see in the 16 time frame, Arizona had a big bump. And then in the 19 time frame, Oregon has had a big bump. We were on the sidelines going to those R3 conferences, listening to national trends, listening to what others were doing. And Arizona went through a license simplification process, much like what we accomplished here. At the time, Brian Wakeling was with us, and he had just recently come from Arizona, and he connected us with their human dimensions person and their data guru, and we actually contracted with Lauren Chase of Chase & Chase Consultants to try to mimic what Arizona had accomplished, because as you can see, they had great success and Oregon had success. So they had a jump start on us, but we were able to learn from their positive and their negatives. Like I said, it's not always what you did right that you can learn from, what you did wrong, and try to avoid those missteps along the way. So you can see there was great success on the hunting side. On the fishing side, if you look at California, continual decline. Everybody else was extremely flat. You can see the license simplification in Arizona for the fishing had that same corresponding bump in the same years. This is some of the data that Lauren Chase put together when we started this license simplification process. We looked at how outdoor recreation had changed participants per capita over time. If we look at 1990, we are above 13% of the state's population were anglers, and above 4% of the state's population held hunting license. Multiple things happened. We were losing anglers. We were not losing hunters, but the population was growing at a rate that outpaced the percentage of anglers and hunters at the same time. So we were losing a per capita share of people getting in the field recreating, fishing and hunting. At the same time we were losing per capita, our resident combo license, Chase & Chase Consultants put this together. This is a time frame from 2007 through 2015, representing our annual resident license combos. And you can see we had quite a few in the youth, and then that 20-year-old age group really drops off, and then you build back. But as you can see over time, the peaks were getting lower and the peaks were creeping older. The highs weren't as high, and it's called the aging out of our customer base. All states see this 20-year-old age group as a difficult group to get. That's when they're in college. That's when they're low on money. That's when we lose those people participate in those activities, and then we try to gain them back over time. Our goals in simplification were very simple. Remove laws and regulations that were confusing and potential barriers to participation. Simplify the license structure in a revenue neutral manner. I want to speak about this one before I go on to the other bullet points. The revenue neutral was one of Director Walsey's most coveted items. We have watched other agencies around the United States get into budget shortfalls, and they know they need more money. So what they do is they increase fees. And we approach this as a less is more, or less fees, more revenue is how we approached it. This was proven to me years ago watching the Wildlife Commission, even before I was on it. Commissioner Tommy Ford, in the past, if you were applying for PIW, it used to be 50% of a bighorn sheep or an elk went to participate in PIW. So if it was $100, you put in $50 to even participate. And it was all of your deer tag application fees stayed in to participate. And Commissioner Ford at the time said, I believe less is more. And that's when we went to the $10 to participate in PIW. And the rest of the commission was very skeptical about less is more. And Commissioner Ford said, if I'm wrong, I'll write a check and cover the difference. I'm willing to take that bet. He took that bet and he won. The very first year, by reducing it from $50 down to 10 and $30 down to 10, there was more participation and actual an increase in revenue. You see this in multiple facets that by charging less, you can get more participation, and more participation. When I go through this, I will talk about what participation means to the agency. Another thing we wanted to do is bring forward the best e-commerce practices for customers' ease of use and customer retention. We wanted to make the car go faster. That's a term we use around the Department of Wildlife, saying, are we moving a needle? Is it making it better? How are these changes? Is it just change for change, or is it change to make things better? And if it's not change, if it's something we do, why don't we change it to make it better, make the car go faster? And then the last thing, delight the customers. This is something I've picked up through multiple things I've watched with Warren Buffett, and he puts it out there simply that if you're not delighting customers in today's world, you're going out of business. You can take examples like JCPenney, Sears, Kmart. The people that are struggling, they met customer expectations. Meeting customer expectations does not keep you in business anymore. If you're not delighting your customers, they're not going to come back. 4 steps to simplification and research. We did a comparative analysis to see how Nevada compared to other prices to other states. We looked at all the Western states, saw what their pricing structure was on license, on big game tags, on everything. We did data mining to see how current prices compared to historical trends. We hadn't made changes in 20 years, very nominal changes over that time frame. Focus groups to answer the whys behind customers' decisions. And then after the focus groups, the information we derived from the focus groups run by Lauren Chase of Chase & Chase Consultants, he derived a survey to ask questions of information he learned through the focus groups. And we sent those surveys out to a cross-section of our hunters and anglers. We looked at age, we looked at where they lived, county. We looked at all the facets and made sure we represented every one of the groups that participate in our activities, so we had a statistically a viable survey. Some of the things we heard during those focus groups: a hunting license is really not good for anything. It's like buying a truck with no tires. And when you hear that comment, you go, wow. And that was the case at the time. You bought a hunting license and it didn't get you in the field. You needed a Nevada state duck stamp, or you needed an upland stamp, or you needed to have a tag. You needed something accompanying that. If you wanted to go fishing and you were fishing for trout, you needed that trout stamp. So we wanted to make it all on one. And then another comment we heard that really resonated with us is, I like the idea of bundling because I want to obey the law, and there are 6 different regulations or laws, and there might be a 7th that I don't know about. I avoid fishing altogether because I don't want to make an error and get a ticket for something I was unaware of. So when you hear these 2 comments, we knew that we needed to make major changes, because this was a theme that we were getting throughout. So what we did in simplification, this is our 2017 and 2018 inserts in our magazines. And we went from 28 different license combinations and options when you throw in the trout stamps, the duck stamps, the upland stamps, and everything. We went from 28 down to 8. No more stamps required. And combination license options for non-resident, seniors, and junior license holders. We had watched Arizona do the combination license, and it proves to be a good idea. It helps with your certification numbers. That's one item, and certification drives our PR and DJ money. But when you put that instrument in a non-resident or senior or junior's hands, their ability to get in the field and participate in fishing, we're trying to market to people during the time that they're out scouting for a big game tag to say, hey, if you're in that area, here's the places you can go fish. Don't use every resource we have on the landscape. And if we can get them into fishing on the years that they do have tags and out scouting, the years that they don't have tags, they see that there's other avenues to get in the field to help retain them as customers into the future. We went from a completely desktop-based system to a modern e-commerce-based system. And it was very funny when we rolled this out, depending on your age, the picture on the right, the new CalcMY system, I would walk around the office and say, hey, sign into your account or sign on and claim your account. And depending on age is how the individuals used the system. An old guy like me sees this get started button and I'd hit that. But I'd go into a younger person and they'd go up and hit the top right and start. It just different uses by different ages, but we were able to build a system that spoke to everybody. One main thing we did, a mobile first build. We wanted to be able to let people interact with us on their phones, on their iPads, tablets, whatever it may be. We wanted that to be the primary. We wanted the ability to display a license on your phone. That was part of simplification. We wanted ease of use. We branded get online, get outside. We truly wanted to put it in your hand and make it available to get into the field. This is a breakdown of our first year in our application period. In the very first year in applications, 53% were desktop, 38% were mobile, and 9% were tablet. That's a huge swing from 100% desktop the year before. Not only did we want to modernize the way that our CalcMY system worked or our storefront, we wanted to update our communication strategies through targeted marketing using different platforms, social media, podcast, email, text. When we were with the old system, we would send out emails and we would have a 50% bounce rate. Our emails, they were put in so long ago that when you were trying to communicate, people wouldn't update their emails. And so we made a decision with the new system that email was part of your sign-on. And everybody had to claim their account in the new system. So we were able to get fresh emails, and our ability to communicate with our customers increased tremendously. We're probably 97, 98% gets through with a huge open rate, much more than any other industry. When we talk about our open rates, and I should know them off the top of my head for this presentation, but I don't, but it's multiple times higher, our open rates. We use text, and many of you on this meeting probably have never got a text from Nevada Department of Wildlife. That is our tool of last resort, but it is a very effective tool. If right now, if you haven't done your big game return card, we have better than 2,000 and the last day to get those in without being subject to a suspension or a $50 fine to get back into the big game application period next year. We are sending out text to those delinquent people, and you can actually watch our dashboards when we're doing the big game application period. If we send a text to people, we're getting down to the last couple of days and we send a text to the people that have a bonus point and they risk losing their bonus points if they're sit out for 2 years. We send a text and you can see immediate response from those text messages going out. So it is a very effective tool, but it's one that we save. It's not something we want to overuse. We don't want people to opt out of it. That's one of the things we try not to do, is wear people out. We don't want opt out. We want them to engage with us. Factors that we use when using these platforms, we look at age, gender, the activity. We don't want to send something about elk hunting to a striped bass fisherman at Lake Mead or vice versa. We do targeted marketing based on activity, region, every bit of it. We have the data at our fingertips. Our dashboards tell us a lot. Our queries, we can pull anything out and target any group. And by targeting marketing, you don't get those people that opt out. You can connect with the people with the right information, and you just keep moving forward. The other thing we've done is we've worked well with industry partners. Go Hunt, it's a Nevada-based company that is continuing to grow. They cater to the novice. They're trying to help people discover how to get into the field. And their outreach and Epic Outdoors, they're two of the main ones. We've done a lot of podcasts with Epic Outdoors. These two private companies, we have 46,000 followers on our Facebook, and not all of them are hunters. These two have better than 100,000 on Facebook, Instagram, multiple platforms. Their reach is much broader than ours. And so we work with them, we give them content, we do podcasts with them. Go Hunt actually runs our Dream Tag for us, for the Community Foundation, the Dream Tag Committee. They're great partners, and we see tremendous growth in non-resident applications. We actually get about $700,000 a year more in non-resident hunting license revenue than we do resident hunting license revenue. And people will say, boy, that's bad because the residents are taking away our opportunity. Residents are capped at 10% of the big game opportunity. But what Go Hunt and Epic sells to these non-residents, that their odds, it's a long-term investment, as they put it. It's a long-term investment for a good, true, once-in-a-lifetime adventure on public land and great wide open spaces that you don't have to get a trespass fee or anything. So we're sought after in the West for that. 365 licensing was another big change we made. It's valid from 1 year from the date of purchase. But what this does is it allows us to market a fishing license 12 months a year. This weighs more into the fishing end than the hunting end. We used to see the last 3 months in 2018, the last 3 months of the year, 47% of our license sales went to one-day license people. They didn't buy an annual license because they didn't want to spend the full boat on something that was only good for a couple months. They'd buy on one day. We wanted to transition that to being able to market, and we're growing in those 3 months in the first month of the year because the license year used to end in end of February. We can market during those time frames, but we went from 47% buying one-day licenses in 2018 to last year only 38% of the people in that time frame bought one-day licenses. And if you can get an annual license into their pocket, their ability to get in the field more and become more addicted to that activity instead of a one-time something that becomes a habit to them, you have a better chance to retain them. Another thing we did was auto renew. In 2018, we had 52,000, 2019, 59,000. Today, we have 81,136 license holders. This doesn't count the boat registrations we have. If you look at boat registrations, we have over 90,000 customers on auto renew. Some of the boat customers overlap with the hunting customers. They have both, but we're in excess of 90,000 people with auto renew. That is our retention mechanism. When we did the RFP and fast-tracked the RFP and all the things I've talked about to this point, and especially on this auto renew piece, when we were at those R3 conferences and talking to other states, they told us this auto renew is going to eat our lunch, that we would disenfranchise the customer and we would overwhelm staff giving refunds. We don't see that. But if somebody phones up or comes in through our chat line and says, hey, I didn't mean to auto renew, no questions asked, we give them their money back if it's within a certain time frame. And I would rather give back a few refunds and have this retention that is shown through the numbers we have in front of you. Another thing that we're really proud of is the average age of hunter. As I showed in the chart before, it was aging out. This is currently, we're down to 42.8. It continued, Commissioner McNinch probably remembers watching this number continue to creep. Every time we saw it, it would go up a few points. And we've been able to drive that number back down. And you can see where it's occurring, that 11 to 15 in the residents. And the 21 to 25, our growth is happening here, and we're staying stable in that 56 through 80 age group. Everything we've done with online only and everything on applications, we were afraid we may lose some customers, but we're actually staying flat in that demographic. And you can see our growth in the non-residents is very high in that 31 to 40, 41 year age group. That's where a lot of our growth is occurring, is in those age groups, and that's helping drive that average age down. Here's where we're at today. These are actual license certification numbers that chart this out. And as I had it before, this is right when we started license simplification and the new vendor rollout, January 1st, 2018. And the first year we had tremendous growth. The second year, if you remember back to the Oregon and Arizona, they did license simplification. They brought in new vendors. They did some things. They had a bump, but then they actually tailed off a little bit. We had a bump, and with all of our outreach, everything we've done, we've been able to not have that tail off. We were able to see modest growth that next year. And I truly believe this spike again, that represents the COVID year. If we had not made all the changes that we have made with ease of use and simplification, everything, we would not have been able to take advantage of the COVID rush to the outdoors as well as we have at this point. So it has really paid off, and we were prepared for what came along, not knowing what we were preparing for. So 3-year growth, fishing license sales, these are certified numbers that we have to turn in for Pittman Robinson and Dingle Johnson apportionment from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. 73% growth in fishing license sales and 54% growth in hunting license sales over the last 3 years. Now, I get questioned a lot when we're at these national conferences. I pull out those two numbers I just pulled out, the 73 and the 54. And they go, yeah, but those are just fake numbers because you change your license structures. Non-residents can only get a combo. Seniors and juniors can only get a combo. So that's not true customer growth. That is growth derived from your change in license structure. But no, I'll still go with this number. We had a 42% growth in overall customers. But it does reflect better when you look at the license certification numbers that are key. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more here in a minute. Not only are sales going up, applications going up, but programs like the Silver State Tag have increased tremendously, 113%. This is where we were in 2017, 366,900. Here's the total dollars brought in this year through Silver State Tags, $782,000. We're going to discuss later today the heritage auction tags and trying to figure out what vendors to get those out to. And we always talk about record auction prices. But look at what we get for an elk tag through Silver State, 259,000, sheep tag 172, antelope 122, deer tag $228,000. Those are loaded up numbers. Those include the Silver State tag fee. On the elk, it includes the $5 elk damage fee. And on all of them, it includes the $3 predator fee. They are part of the Silver State package. So in this total of 782,000, you have a little over 90,000 goes into the predator account and 44,000 go into the elk damage account. But the veteran $600,000 do go into the heritage account, which is projects on the ground. Dream tag sales increased 83%. This is a program when Dream Tag and Silver State came about, they seemed like they're competing programs, but they're both proving vital sources of revenue for different reasons to the Nevada Department of Wildlife. The Dream Tag, a few years back when the federal government had to shut down, it was right in the middle of when we needed to get seed on the ground, and we were supposed to be using BLM money to get the seed on the ground. But we weren't getting checks from the feds to get the seed on the ground during that crucial time period where you have moisture on the ground where you just can't put seed on any time and hope. There's a window that you have to get it on. That was the exact window that the government shutdown was occurring. Because of the structure of the Dream Tag Committee and being outside of the state purview, they can be a little more nimble with their funds. And we went to them, and in 1 year, I believe they gave us $350,000 to bridge that gap so we could meet that critical time frame. This year, when we needed to fly water in an emergency basis down in Southern Nevada, I was able to go to NBU Reno and ask for $50,000. I originally asked for $75,000 from NBU Reno and the Dream Tag, and they both committed to that. But we lowered our ask from them to $50,000 apiece. But having the flexibility with the Dream Tag outside the state process, and that committee working with us well, and the community foundation working with us well, these are real dollars on the ground. And the Dream Tag prides itself on buying seed and helping us with fire rehabilitation. So when you see an increase like that, you know that we're doing more for fire rehab on the ground. Dollars saved under the new contract. If you look at a cost per unit, so we knew what a application cost us in the old system, $5.70, and it's $1 in the new system with a couple little adders. And we used to pay an application fee on every single application. We pay an application on every application now, but that application fee under the old system covered the fulfillment, the sending out of the tags and all the processing of the tags. We have a different line item for fulfillment with the new vendor, and the major portion of the dollars you see saved in front of you right here comes through the big game application period. And over a total of 3 years, if you use the fee structure we used to be under and put in today's workflow and widgets that we actually sell to the public, we've saved $4.7 million in the last 3 years. But on the opposite side, with all these gains, we have gained 3.7 in 18, 4.5 million in 19, and $6 million increased revenue over where we were in 2017, for a 3-year total gain of additional revenue of $14.25 million of additional revenue to the agency. So you combine the savings with the revenue, we're approaching $19 million in increased revenue to an agency of this size. That's a game changer. It really is. Some of the things that are coming soon through all this, we're not just going to sit and rest and go, hey, our revenue's up, our customers up, everything's looking good. We're going to continue to look to improve and do things for the customer, which in turn does things for wildlife. Draw order. As we spoke about in prior commission meetings, we're going to be drawing all the male species before the female species, and that may increase how people apply, because people may apply for a cow elk when they wouldn't have in the past because they didn't want that cow elk to be drawn before their possibility of the bull, with limiting one per species as we have. So we anticipate this may change the way that people draw, and it's a good thing for the customer. As we passed a little earlier in the year, the first come, first served tags, for those tags that are returned to the department 14 days prior to the hunt starting, we're going to get those into people's hands. That will be in place this year. You're going to have to be signed into your account to view the list of what's on there. You have to put it into your shopping cart, and then there's going to be a time limit. It can sit in your shopping cart before you check out. To make sure that this is a fair process, we are going to have Calcami randomize how these tags are put out in the time frame. We're going to process them at the department, give them to Calcami, and they're going to randomize the time that these display on people's accounts. You have to be logged into your account. We're going to watch for those accounts that set up algorithms to auto refresh, to try to game the system, to let other people know what tags are out there. We want this to be a true first come, first serve, and take all the gaming out of it that we can to make it a fair opportunity for everybody. Something coming for 2022 that we're looking at is an e-tag option, that as you can display your hunting and fishing license on your phone, we are looking to provide an opportunity for those that opt in. It's not going to be mandatory, but for those that opt in, they can start displaying their tag on their phone. They will be required to, instead of it to return to their vehicle's camp under the paper license or the paper tags now, they will be required to punch that tag at the location of harvest. But when they do that, it's going to automatically, when they get back into cell phone range, if they're in cell phone range, it'll be automatic. It'll be an application. But if they're out of cell phone range, when they do that, when they get back into cell phone range, it'll automatically populate their return card. Take that step out for the customer. So we're just trying to continue to advance things for the customer. Another thing we're looking at, we have it partially in now, and that's an easy button. Per species now, if you applied last year, you get in, it will say, here's the choices you did last year. If you like those choices, you can select now, and you don't have to repopulate your 5 choices or 3 choices or however many choices you have. So we have an easy button per species or per gender of species now, but we are considering an easy button that you get in and say, hey, you applied for these 4 species this year in these areas. If you like it, buy now. Make it a 2-minute process. One concern I have with the easy button is we have really grown in applications per customer. And when you make it an easy button, our upsell option could be limited. But in the new system, we're able to update, change our choices, add new selections, add species anytime through the big game application process. In the old system, you did your application. If you didn't like it, you had to have it withdrawn and reapply. It was a very cumbersome process. We let you change your mind throughout the process from start to end, and simplify it so people can get in. And like I said, if they change their mind, they can change it. They can add species, and we can upsell. What did we accomplish? We reversed the aging out of our customer bases. We increased one of the three components in the calculation of PR and DJ funding, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. We can't speak to the exact numbers yet. Anytime we get new numbers from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it's on a 2-year lag. So they're working on certifications for our 2018 license year right now. That's what our apportionment will be based on, is 2018. So there's a 2-year lag in apportionment off your certified hunters or anglers. And we had that great bump. And what we've been told, preliminary, is we are going to be up considerably, veteran 10 getting closer to 15% in Pittman Robinson and Dingle Johnson funding for the agency this year. Those are big. That's what we were chasing. It's that license certification is a key component to your apportionment. So that's why the less is more really comes into play there. If you get more revenue off the same customer base, you're not changing your apportionment. And so we chased more people buying to get a higher rate of apportionment from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we broadened the base of a very narrow funding model, which Director Walsey spoke of prior to me doing this presentation. So why is this important? We didn't do all this. We did all this to delight the customer. We did all this to do the things to interact with our base. But the most important thing is money on the ground for vital wildlife enhancement projects. That's why we do what we do. And without that, the 895 species that Director Walsey mentioned wouldn't have the care and the resources to take care of them that we currently do. So with that, I would entertain any questions or ask if Director Walsey has anything to add that I may have missed that he wants to chime in with.
Madam Chair, if I might, thank you, Deputy Director Robb. I really appreciate your guidance through all that effort over the past several years. And just one point of clarification, when Deputy Director Robb was talking about the revenue from residents and non-residents, just a clarification, he said a 10% cap on residents, and I think most of you understood that was a 10% cap on non-residents. His reference to PR and DJ, the Pittman Robertson and Dingle Johnson, again, those are the federal excise taxes on guns and ammo and fishing equipment, respectively. It's a 10 or 11% tax that goes into the general treasury administered by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that then is apportioned back to 50 states based on a formula that Deputy Director Robb spoke to. And that formula, one of the key variables in that formula is license certifications. The number of licensed hunters that's a key variable in the formula to determine how much a state gets from PR. And the number of licensed anglers is a key variable in the formula to determine how much a state gets from the Dingle Johnson. So again, 95% or so of our agency's annual budget, it comes from user-derived fees. Deputy Director Robb just said it, very narrow funding model for a very broad statutory charge. We only, of that 895 species, only 8% provide us an opportunity to generate revenue. Government is really good at maintaining the status quo. Government's really good at getting to know. Government's really good at charging more to the same shrinking customer base. We think this represents an innovative, creative, and sustainable approach to maximizing our ability to deliver conservation. So this isn't about having more people paying so we can continue to do more of the same. It's about us truly enhancing our ability to meet the needs of all the wildlife and all the habitats in the state. And whether we think it's right, whether we think it's wrong, whether we agree with it, we are self-reliant in the large part when it comes to funding, and it is up to nobody but us. And sportsmen have an incredible history in showing that we are willing to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to conservation. The recovery stories of species in this country that have been funded through sportsmen's activities is a long list, and I'm really happy to see the results of some of these efforts and what it means to our ability on the ground to meet and fulfill our conservation mission. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course. I have a couple of questions. Does anyone else have questions for either Jack or Tony? Yes? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And you guys spoke about the 8% of the species that actually contribute to the revenue generation, but do you guys have any thoughts on leveraging the other 92% of the species in the state and how we can bring revenue in there? I mean, there's probably already some soft metrics with bird watchers and other non-licensed activities that we do, but maybe any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'll share, Madam Chair, if I might. There's been a number of ongoing discussions, and I see Commissioner McNinch sitting up in his chair a little bit because he's been party to some of these efforts that go back over 20 years. There was proposed legislation teaming with wildlife that looked at assessing a similar excise tax on outdoor equipment, binoculars, for example, backpacks. And at the time, there was a lot of pushback from pushback from industry resenting additional taxes. That failed. The most recent effort to do exactly what you're talking about, Commissioner Keel, there's a couple of them, but probably the most promising one is Recovering America's Wildlife Act, where we've talked about that quite a bit here, and there's a lot of momentum in DC. We're pretty optimistic about what the future of that could hold. And what that would essentially do is provide state wildlife agencies with a dedicated funding source towards the implementation of a state wildlife action plan. And we heard Jennifer Newmark mention the state wildlife action plan yesterday. And Nevada is currently revising our state wildlife action plan. Nevada's state wildlife action plan contains 256 species presently in 22 different habitat types. And included in those species are mule deer, bighorn sheep, Lahontan cutthroat trout, sage grouse, species of conservation priority for our state. It isn't a game, non-game divide. It is a species of conservation priority. And so, of course, pygmy rabbits and a whole host of raptors and other species are included in there. And it doesn't necessarily come from an excise tax like what we have on fishing equipment and guns and ammo, but it is a funding source that would assist us in meeting the needs of those other 92% of the species, many of which are in the state action plan.
Commissioner Hubbs?
Thank you, Commissioner Keel. That's so refreshing. I mean, to hear you talk about that, and I share your questions. And I was thinking, you know how you go grocery shopping, and most people know this, but I mean, don't want to put a gender on it. We all grocery shop. But anyhow, you grocery shop and then it says, would you like to donate toward whatever, some charity or some nonprofit or something of that nature. But, in regard to like the binoculars, backpacks, or REI or sports, facilities that sell all kinds of things for outdoor use. I mean, have we ever thought about like asking if the people of Nevada would want to donate in some capacity to say, the desert tortoise or the flycatcher or whatever, you know what I mean? Or whatever, it could be anything to a non-game species or any species or just our wildlife in general, I always think that most of us would do that. I would do that. That's why I think there's lots of ways that we can. Is there no way to put that together, Director Wesley, with the community, or is it just it has to be a tax?
No, it does not have to be a tax. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Hubbs. There are some of those efforts underway, whether it be license plates, for example. I think that there are a number of examples of efforts and attempts. There aren't nearly as many examples of successful efforts and attempts. I think that this idea of broadening that funding base in a sustainable way to help meet the needs of all those species is something that we should spend time discussing and exploring. I don't know that there are many examples of successful models, and even you brought up some of the industry partners in the outdoor rec community, and there's a number of efforts nationally right now to get with the Outdoor Rec Roundtable and try to embrace the outdoor rec community and the REIs, the Patagonias, the Orvises that in some instances have distanced themselves from state wildlife agencies or consumptive uses. And so there's a lot of nuance to it. I appreciate your question and welcome any of those conversations to look for sustainable, broad funding to meet the needs of all the species.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course.
There is an opportunity for the general public not purchasing a license to fund the Nevada Department of Wildlife. It's called the Resource Enhancement Stamp. And that Resource Enhancement Stamp came into being, and it used to be coupled with the Dream Tag. You had to have a Resource Enhancement Stamp to be able to participate in the Dream Tag raffle. When we looked at the laws and we had to privatize the Dream Tag, it can't be done through the Calcami system or prior to the system consultant system. It had to be privatized, and not in combination with the big game application. Go Hunt does it now. But if the department sold the Resource Enhancement Stamp, there was no way to crosswalk between us and Go Hunt to then tell them, hey, so-and-so bought the Resource Enhancement Stamp, they're now eligible to participate in the Dream Tag. So in the last legislative session, the department brought forward a bill to decouple the reliance on the Resource Enhancement Stamp to be able to participate in the Dream Tag. We work with Go Hunt. Go Hunt still sells the Resource Enhancement Stamp, but we brought it back in-house. So now we're selling a Resource Enhancement Stamp on our site, and Go Hunt selling it on their site. And we went from just a little over $40,000 in revenue 2 years ago. This year, because of that law change, we're over $104,000 in revenue in Resource Enhancement Stamp, because we decoupled those and we have the ability to sell it on two sites. And not only do we have the ability to sell that $10 stamp on two sites, you have an unlimited number of stamps you can buy. So if somebody goes in to buy a Resource Enhancement Stamp for $10, it'll ask you how many you want. And you can go down and you can buy 10. You can buy $100 worth of Resource Enhancement Stamps, or you can buy $10 worth. You can buy $1,000 worth. We made it so it's not just one. You say, yeah, I want to buy one, and it'll ask you how many. And like I said, in the first year we brought it back in-house. Between us and Dream Tag, we were over $104,000 in combined revenue on Resource Enhancement Stamp.
Jack, can you give us any demographic information on that? Do you have anything, or maybe we could talk about it at another time? Are sportsmen still funding the Resource Enhancement Stamp, or are the non-consumptive users helping to fund that?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but if I was to bet, 99% of the revenue comes through the Dream Tag sales and our hunt application process.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Commissioner Keel, you hit right in the middle of something that I have. It's the age-old question. How do you? But I want to give a little historical perspective here. There was a time where there was a legislation proposed to charge anybody using a state wildlife management area a fee for entry. If you had a hunting license or a fishing license, you wouldn't be assessed that fee. That would be your permit to go in. And really the whole intent was not necessarily the money collection side, although over the last 15, 18 years that would have occurred, it probably would amount to some substantial amount of money. But the whole point was to create an awareness with the general public that it costs money to do these things and to engage them in paying their way, basically getting them to understand that their general tax, they're not paying for the department to operate. A very small, very small percentage. The public believes that their taxes are paying for the agency pretty much 100%, which is not the case. So this was an attempt to create that awareness. It didn't even get out of the commission as a legislative proposal. This very commission, the fact that you're even interested in it signals a major change from what I experienced at that time. And the reason for it was sportsmen in the state of Nevada did not want non-users to have a seat at the table. It was that simple. That was the reasoning behind it. And this goes to my whole push for the human dimensions and understanding your constituencies. And hats off to the department for the work that they've done to understand, to get to know their constituency and make these changes, because the whole talk of increasing fees, it's not even an issue in Nevada right now, because there's other things happening, and it's because they're providing these options that people are open to and wanting to participate in. So it's a lot of it's discretionary money. They're making choices, and it's awesome what's happening. But what I'm seeing by you asking that question is this shift to I see some doors possibly opening up to have those conversations, because we can't even, there was a time we couldn't even get out of the commission with that whole concept, simply because people didn't want others at the table. So I see that as an option still. Ironically, it came up at the commissioners committee, the same comments. How do we get others to support the agencies? An excise tax on birdseed came up. There was an attempt to do it many years ago, and it didn't work. But a commissioner brought that up. So these concepts are out there. There has been success in increasing sales taxes in Missouri. That was a long time ago, but you can imagine the lift on that. Trying to convince a legislature to increase its sales tax. So the point is that there's a mindset that was probably as big of a hurdle as anything. And it's really encouraging to me that maybe that wall is coming down a little bit, and maybe these opportunities will have a shot in the future that they really couldn't even get out of the gate originally. So you really got my juices flowing in terms of, hoping that maybe someday we can get over this hump and find a way to get everybody to help support this. Robb was the best option. That it's a once in a lifetime thing. I'd really like to start talking more about it again. Tony, you kind of got me thinking about that now. So.
Okay, Commissioner Hubbs.
Yes, just to add on to Commissioner McNinch, yes, I do think there is a large swath of the population that is very interested in the rest of the 92% of our wildlife species. I just do not feel like we're we're able at this time to reach them, and that's been frustrating to watch for me personally. And so I believe if we explore that, there are a lot of individuals out in the community in Nevada who are very interested in wildlife, who would come to the table with money to help toward wildlife. And it makes me sad to hear places like REI or other retail stores may not want to be associated with the department because a lot of people go there for products to go out into the field. And I mean, that's a great place to start. And I would hope that we can learn to work with those types of retail communities that a lot of outdoors people in general go to get ready to go out, whether it be kayaking, whether it be hiking. They're going out there to see wildlife. It's very obvious. So if we can tie in wildlife with any of that, I think there would be a good turnaround in a positive way. So I don't know how to restore that or what's happened over time, but I think those relationships are really important.
Secretary Wasley.
Thank you. I'd just like to respond to Commissioner Hubbs just briefly and share that, I've not heard REI or Patagonia, directly say that, they want that distance. But what I have observed is that there is a huge lack of awareness to the full mission, the statutory charge of state wildlife agencies, and that disproportionate reliance on funding on a disproportionately small number of our species, that really narrow funding model has made it difficult for us as an industry, if you will, state wildlife agencies to achieve that broader understanding. And we are reminded of it every time we go into legislative session and some of the questions that we hear and some of the assumptions that people make about who we are and what we do, whether it's the assumption that the Department of Wildlife has responsibility for the management of wild horses, or they see us for those controversial issues that take so much of our time here as a commission and an agency. Those things tend to define us in their eyes, and we have not done as good a job as maybe we could in achieving a more of an understanding and appreciation for the full breadth of our statutory charge and conservation mission. And to that end, there are a number of national conversations right now with the Outdoor Rec Roundtable, with industry partners, including Bass Pro Shops and Patagonia and others, to try to better integrate some of the wildlife pieces into those outdoor rec pieces, try to find how we can all work together to synergize our capacity, our interests, our customers, to elevate the importance of wild animals and wild places to the American citizens.
Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is a good opportunity to point out that Tony's work, not just at the state level, but with the relevancy roadmap, is a major component of this whole thing. It's getting to, we just don't. I wish we spent the time on that we do these other issues, because if we want to see substantive change towards that, finding funding structure, a broad-based funding structure, and getting people really involved with wildlife, that's where it's at in my mind. I've said it before. It happens despite the comments made earlier in public comment regarding WAFA. There's committee after committee, just hours and hundreds, if not thousands of hours spent on this, trying to figure out how to turn this very long train on this very narrow track. And there are efforts going on. It just takes time. People aren't going to go there directly. They're not going to go there immediately. It's a huge change. It's a huge societal thinking, you're changing everything. And you know, Tony's involvement, the Department of Wildlife and other staff's involvement in this is high. There's a lot going on, and they're deeply involved, and I appreciate their efforts in it. And I hope that they continue to find the energies to keep pushing forward despite the slow progress that occurs. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I appreciate the work that they're doing, and Tony, your leadership on that national stage, that national level with that stuff. It's going to happen, but it might take all of us to take a step back and really understand what it means. And you know, it's challenging us, that's for sure.
Oh, sure. Commissioner Rogers?
Yeah, just real quick comment. As you know, one of the newest members of the commission, I just want to thank Deputy Director Robb for his presentation this morning. Very educational and very informative for myself, kind of eye-opening on some things. So anyway, really appreciate the presentation this morning and all the work that's going into everything that you guys are doing for the department. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Jack, I have two quick questions. One is, are we seeing, so there's kind of this resurgence with I want to say a younger demographic, a younger audience in knowing where their food comes from. There's these, you know, we're seeing some establishments of community gardens and people wanting to eat healthier, leaner, organic meat. Do you feel like we have any information about that in our licensed sales? Do you feel like that's maybe been a part of the increase or not? And if it's not, can we take advantage of that in a positive way somehow?
Jack Robb for the record. We anecdotally hear of that, but our numbers in that 20 to 35 range show us that that is occurring without a doubt. Okay. We are gaining. That's our biggest gains, that 20 to 35. We're seeing tremendous growth there. Last year, because we went Hunter Ed online, we had 49% more people take Hunter Ed last year than the prior year. So we will continue to see that growth. With it being available online, you're going to be able to reach that different demographic. We made it prior to last year. We made it if you were over 21, I believe. Forgive me if I'm wrong, 18 or 21, that you could do Hunter Ed online only. We still encourage people to take an in-class Hunter Ed if they have the time. Everybody that we've done online Hunter Ed last year, we're going to circle back with them and offer a field day for them, just so we can get that exposure to them and they get that exposure to different methods and the importance of the things we do. So we are seeing that age group come in and that demographic come in. It's just, we can't tease it out of the data.
And that was the demographic that I was most curious about, because it feels like it's coming from that age group. I had one other question, but I see Secretary Wasley's taking his mute off. So
yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add to some of Deputy Director Robb's answer to your question. And I think the commission is aware that the department is a partner in the Wild Harvest Initiative with Conservation Visions. We were the third state wildlife agency. Florida was the first, Texas was the second, Nevada was the third to become partners in that Wild Harvest Initiative effort. We're continuing, we're currently working on some survey materials to understand the food value, the sharing index. And so certainly as we learn some of that, we'll share it more broadly. But then we also have a staff position, an outreach connection, an outdoor connection coordinator that was approved in the last legislative session. This is a general fund funded position to engage some of the non-traditional audiences, and that position is has the responsibility of that Wild Harvest Initiative relationship. And so those are, related to the locavore movement, local, organic, lean, healthy protein. You'll see a number of recipes being shared through our social media channels and looking at the food value of some of that wild harvest. So just wanted to add that as well. Thank you.
That's great. My other question has to relates to the savings under the new contract, the 4.7 million. Is marketing included in that savings, or is that a gross number or a net number? I was just curious.
Jack Robb, for the record, that is just workflow dollars. That is per license transaction, per application transaction, per boat registration. If you look at all the products that no other monies other than the items we sell and the cost associated with us selling that item to the vendor.
Okay. Okay. All right. This was a fantastic presentation. I'm really appreciative of this. And I think, I hope others are too that are watching today with us.